So good afternoon, everybody. It's Clayton Leonard with Cottonseed Bale.
Macy Ledbetter, Spring Creek Outdoors.
Sorry, we're winging this. As you know, yesterday they announced our first positive case of screwworm in South Texas, Zavala County, which is now under a quarantine area. Parts of the county are restricted movement of animals, things like that. We've both been getting a number of calls. Not nearly as many as Macy. He works with landowners all over the state, but lots of calls, lots of concern, lots of interest in what does this mean? What does this mean for my ranch? What can I do? What can I not do? How to get prepared. So we both live in San Saba County, so I texted him a little bit ago and just drove on over to the ranch here and figured we'd have a conversation so we can make some of this information available to you all as best we can tell. This is still, we're going to be learning on the fly a little bit. No pun intended.
Yeah,
sorry.
that was good. That was good.
Sorry.
Yeah.
But, there's still things we're hoping to get access to, tools that we haven't yet discovered. So we just kind of want to share what we know, what and how you can prepare yourself. So I'll let Macy, you got way more experience than I do and all this stuff. You're an old guy. So were you around when the screwworms were last time?
No, not quite that
Okay,
old. But I've got a lot of clients that were, and so I really do have firsthand knowledge. Not personal knowledge, but I can go out to people that lived it. And if you're about 66 years old or older, you have lived it. And if you're a little bit younger, you still have really vivid memories and stories from parents, grandparents, that kind of stuff. So again, what I would deem reliable sources. And it's scary stuff. Now we know how the book can end. We know the worst case scenario, but we also know how to fix it. So that was a tremendous learning curve. Because it caught them kind of flat-footed originally, and then they had to figure it out, and it took a while. So, there were still some reports of screwworm in Texas into the 70s. Now, those were little pop-up isolated events, but you can say from, the mid-50s to the early 70s, Texas battled the New World Screwworm, and be accurate and be correct. Today, and thank you for coming over, Clayton. I mean, we're neighbors in a neighborly sense because you had to drive over here, but we're still in the same county, and to me, that's neighborly. And I appreciate you coming over here today because today is a very important day. I want to make it known that we're sitting on my ranch that was settled in 1906. We're family land heritage. I'm the 5th generation. I now have 2 granddaughters. So we're talking about 7 generations on the same land in San Saba County. And so I'm speaking from that. I'm also speaking from a wildlife biologist of 34 years of experience, of professional experience. So I think we both, in our line of work and in our hobbies, we deal with landowners, we deal with outdoorsmen, we deal with hunters every day. And I've probably dealt with more people in the last 2 or 3 days than I've dealt with in a long time. It's just amazing. People are scared. People are concerned. I'm scared. I'm concerned. I don't think it's the end of the world by any means, but I do believe that people should be a little concerned. They should be seeking resources and education and outreach as much as they can. I witnessed Governor Abbott's news release today, a couple of hours ago, and it didn't offer a whole lot of suggestions, quite honestly. I think they're doing a good job. They're putting words out and keeping it in front of everybody's mind, but at the take-home message, what did I learn from it? Can't say that I took many notes. Can't say that I've got some deliverables as you and I have to do in a daily living. We've got to deliver deliverables. We've got to produce something. And so unfortunately, I didn't think I saw that today. But anyway, I welcome you to the ranch. I'm coming to you from a personal level as a longtime friend, as a ranch that's been in the family since 1906, 5th generation with the 7th on the ground. This is a major topic. This is something big. It's not anthrax. Anthrax has an endemic area, almost a predictable area, a historic area, and so it really doesn't travel, whereas the screwworm can travel in a multitude of ways. Apparently it has got a lot of ways to travel other than just flying, as flies do, but they're traveling on people and pets and livestock and trailers and vehicles and Gulf streams maybe, who knows what else. But, this instance in Zavala County, I know the ranch very, very well. Happens to be a client ranch of mine. And, I got on Onyx yesterday, and I did just a quick measurement from their westernmost boundary fence to the Rio Grande. Straight line's 45 miles. So you can confidently say and believe and know that Screwworm is now interior Texas, 45 miles from the Mexican border. That's disturbing to me.
Yeah, that's fast too.
It's fast.
I mean, there was no real recorded, documented official, 100 miles from the border from there. I mean, it was down in Coahuila and then Tamaulipas. It wasn't quite as close like Acuna. There was some reports, but it got there really quick.
Got there really quick, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And 40 miles in, and
If you read the biological fact sheets that's put out by, I guess, APHIS or maybe Animal Health Commission, it says that an adult fly can fly up to 12 miles. Now, I don't know if they put a radio collar. I don't know how you figure that, but anyway, this thing has been moving too fast for flies to fly, in my opinion. So it's trailers, trucks, vehicles, animals, all the above, kind of deal. And to me, it's kind of a moot point.
Yeah,
how
it's
it
here.
traveled. Yeah,
it's here.
how it got here doesn't
It's here.
really matter.
We
It's
gotta
here
figure out
today.
how to deal with it.
That's right. Put on your boots.
Right.
Yeah.
We got to
it's here
lace
today.
up, and how do we try and contain it as much as we can, if we can? What tools can you use to hopefully combat it? What tools are we maybe hoping we can get access to combat it maybe even more? The only way that we know to effectively eliminate it is a long-term solution. That's going to be the sterile fly production facility, and that's going to take years.
Unfortunately, Brooke Rollins and Governor Abbott confirmed it today. It's going to be the fourth quarter of 2027. So that's roughly 14 months from today, roughly, just round numbers. So what do we do in the meantime? That's 14 months of I'm doing air quotes here, free range screwworm.
Right.
So what do we need to do today? What do we need to do tomorrow? What do we need to plan for next week, next month?
Right.
And as you know, right now we're in the hill country. We're in Central Texas, and fawns are on the ground right now. And Zavala County fawns, South Texas fawns,
the next few weeks,
just the next couple of weeks. Yeah, the peak fawning date for South Texas, the western part of South Texas, is July 15th. So they too are going to have early born fawns this month.
Now, historically, the fawns are probably the most at risk, short-term in danger of us, having greatly reduced fawn crops here in the next few years. And then there's the risk of adult deer, through other scrapes and injuries or ticks or, things like that. But fawns are going to be kind of the ground zero where the battle line really is. And you got, what can you really do from a wildlife standpoint? We don't really have many tools, really any tools in the tool belt, other than try and make sure if you're running cattle or any other livestock on the ranch, make sure they're all vaccinated and wormed. You don't want to give it any chance to build up, the infestation and the swarm, if you will, any larger if you can control those things. So there's, ivermectin, and there's some other things that can be given to livestock that can keep, I don't think it's a blanket, it eliminates the risk of the flies, but it greatly reduces the risk of the flies. When the fly lays the eggs and then the larvae ingest some of the blood, there's some ivermectin and residual pesticide, if you will, that will kill majority of those. So it's not 100% silver bullet, but that would be, your first line of defense would be make sure all your livestock, if you do have livestock on the ranch, make sure they're vaccinated. I think they're good for about a month. It'll, it's like 28 days or something like that, ivermectin or Dectomax or something like that, stays within the blood's effective. So particularly during your, summer months, your fawning seasons, make sure your cattle, any other livestock, you're on the regular worming regimen. Keep vigil eye out. If you're seeing, a calf that's laying over there isn't moving, you need to have eyes on your cattle every day. If you have sheep, goats, same thing. We were talking about DMP pens. I want you to share some more about that. But if you have DMP pens, try and get to where you're walking those pens. Get your deer used to you being in there, and try and save as many of those babies as possible.
That's right.
Because we're going to need them.
And so if you own a pair of binoculars, put them in your truck today, like right now. Again, talking about sheep, goats, cattle, horses, swine, you're going to need binoculars to check these animals. You know, top, bottom, front, side. Not just your eyes. At 50 yards, you're going to miss it. You're going to absolutely miss it. So probably if you're hearing this, you probably own a pair of binoculars. So go get them out of the closet, go get them out of the hunting bag, and go put them in your truck right now. Put them on the dashboard right now, because you're going to need them. Because I mean, this is a close inspection of everything.
What would they be looking for?
So a female screwworm fly is looking for an obvious wound, which goes without saying. You're going to be looking for that. But also any orifice, any mucus or wet orifice, a mouth part, an anus, an umbilical cord. If we're talking about young animals, young animals, all mammals have an umbilical cord. You really want to closely inspect that. If in the last, just say the last 30 days, you've done any dehorning, any branding, any castrating, any kind of surgical type procedures that involved a blade, you need to really watch it. Again, even if it's 30 days old.
There's wound site spray that you can get. It's labeled now for screwworm. So if you're doing any of those procedures, make sure you have all the proper care. You know, if it's an aerosol spray and you have to create a wound, put that spray on there. You don't want to, you want to lay that barrier protection until that heals over, because that's going to be, you know, ground zero for attracting flies.
And if you don't have to do a surgical procedure right now, if it's not imperative that you castrate, if you could put it off.
Try and wait for the winter.
Yeah, if you could put it off a month, I would put it off as much as that.
If you're a cattle guy, try and look for winter calving.
That's right.
You know, we winter calf now anyway at
Do
our
you?
ranch.
Yeah,
so,
good.
you know, that would be a shift you could make as a landowner. Try and pull your bulls off, you know, pretty quick. You know,
right, real quick, yeah.
You know,
that's a long-term plan, but you can get started today. That's
so,
right.
yeah,
that's
but
right.
I mean, those are the kind of things you want to be thinking. We can't change when deer breed and when they fawn, but you can try and minimize the risk to your livestock, to maybe building up populations. Because in the winter, the flies can't handle the cold. So as these populations grow within Texas, if we have a cold winter, that population is going to get pushed further and further south. A really cold winter, you know, that's going to be our best tool in the short term, is a good cold winter to try and push them back as far south, hopefully well into Mexico. But it could just be the valley, and deep South Texas may have them persisting through the winter.
Yeah, but unfortunately, South Texas is not known for winters. You know, we can get it up here in Central Texas and West Texas, North Texas, but you may or you may not have a winter in South Texas.
If you're in South Texas, you may just have to prepare for kind of year-round vigilance and monitoring.
I think I would prepare for the worst and be happy when it snows or whatever. Let's talk about maybe cattle rotational grazing, and where would you, on your ranch, Clayton, in San Saba County, you've got multiple pastures. Would you think about rotating your cattle into a more open pasture closer to your house, maybe?
Yeah, that's what, so we calve out in some of our open improved pastures. So where I have good visibility during the calving season, particularly if I have heifers or young cattle, then I'm out there every day, every other day, looking at the babies, checking everything, eyes on. You know, particularly now, those calves are worth a lot of money. So, you know, you want to protect that investment, have them where you can monitor them. You know, if you need to rotate them through the brush when they're not calving.
And when you're checking calves, I'm assuming you're not just checking them from the windshield from 100 yards away, right?
Yeah, I'm on my four-wheeler or on my Polaris driving up. I drive up to the calf and, you know, look at them right there. Sometimes I'll get out if Mama will let me.
Right.
But if not, then I do a visual inspection from 15 foot away.
Yeah.
There's also ear tags out there that have like an ivermectin type thing in there. So we just worked our cattle a month ago, and I had ordered some of those. We went in and changed ear tags out. I tried not to make any new holes. I cut out old tags, put in existing tags. But if you do, then you need to, you know, have
really
your
a good idea.
spray.
Yeah. Use existing holes that are healed up. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So minimize that where you can. But, you know, from a wildlife standpoint, there's minimal tools. One tool we're hoping to maybe get access to is ivermectin that can be ingested. It's approved in some other swine and things like that, confined animals in other countries, other parts of the world. It's an approved thing. We're hoping to get access to that. I think they've even used it in the tick. In areas of
cattle fever
tick in South Texas in wildlife feed and stuff.
With very good results.
And so, you know,
we know it works. We know it
we're
works.
hoping to get approval for that. We can't legally put that in anything at this time. We're hoping to maybe, you know,
I told you we were on the ranch, right?
We're on the ranch. Is that the timer? Is
Yeah,
that time up?
time's up.
We're having chicken for dinner. But that's one thing we could use your help on, is to talk to your local politician. It's going to take federal approval to get that approved, I believe. And, you know, it's an ivermectin-based feed through that we can mix with the feed. But we got to be super careful. We can't just prophylactically put that on everything, because if we do it wrong, we dose it wrong, we can build up a resistance out there in those flies and make super flies to where that tool is no longer available for even livestock. So that needs to be very controlled.
I think that's very important. That's worth really hammering the facts. So if you're going to halfway do it, don't do it at all, because you're going to add to the problem and fix nothing. So yeah, I think that's a really, really hammer.
So be mindful. Try not to just bootstrap it. I'm going to go do it myself. Let's try and do it right. Do it on top, you know, in the light of day. Let's go get approval, and let's do this thing right. And see what we can do to make that happen. But that's probably the one tool we may have yet to be in our tool belt.
That's right.
That we can do, and I guess my view on that is going to be more where we have outbreaks, we can deploy that in the feed source for the deer particularly.
Right.
To try and protect the population of deer, try and protect the fawns.
Some of the questions I've gotten in the last day or two are you know, Dectamax and Doramax. It's the same animal, you know, different name, same animal, but it is different than ivermectin. Well, within the ivermectin, there's also a difference between injectable and pour-on. Right. So when you're talking about ivermectin, you need to, you know, specify injectable versus or.
And injectable is temporarily approved for deer, but of course wild deer you can't go inject.
Right.
So, you know, if you have deer in confinement, you can use ivermectin injectable, you know, in your DMP pens if you're a breeder, or, you know.
The breeder pens with a vet.
It is emergency, yes.
With that's key there, with vet prescription oversight, if you would. Yeah, that's right. And speaking of DMP, you mentioned it, you know, those are wild deer held in temporary captivity for breeding purposes only. So I have reached out to Parks and Wildlife leadership yesterday and requested their emergency rulemaking authority to delay, possibly postpone the mandatory DMP release dates. So if you're a DMP permit user, what that means to you is you have a hard deadline when you need to open the gates and let those wild deer back into the pasture. And I'm asking Parks and Wildlife to reconsider that. Again, it's temporary. This is emergency. And they have emergency rulemaking authority to where they can tweak things such as this. So I'm asking them to consider enacting that authority to allow landowners to keep those deer in the pen longer than normal, because this is not a normal situation. And I'm doing that because if there's 21 deer, which is typical in a DMP pen, in 5 acres, which is typical size of a DMP pen, you can treat the feed more accurately, to your point. Yeah. We could fog the habitat. We could set up fly traps around the feeders, the water sources. So there's some things that we could do with much more control on a 5-acre pen with a known number of, you know, 1 buck and up to 20 does. We have a pretty good estimation of what the buck weighs. We have a pretty good estimation of what the does weigh on average, but we know factually how many's in there. So we're talking about a dosage issue that's critical, and you know what you're trying to medicate. When you know roughly how many you have and what they weigh, then your dosage can be very accurate. Now, one thing about the female fly screwworm is her day-to-day business, she lives in the brush and the grass. And she's waiting, kind of guerrilla warfare. She's watching and waiting and searching for a host with an opening, with a wound, like we talked about, an orifice that she can go and lay her eggs in. And again, it could be a moist, it could be a mucus, or it could be a wound type opening. And so if no animal shows up, she's just going to hang out. Her lifespan's about 2 weeks long. Once she's bred, she's got 12, 14 days of life. So she's not in a panic rush to go lay eggs right now. But so in those 11 days before she finds your deer, she's hanging out in the brush. So something like general fly control, permethrin, spraying around your hard facilities, your livestock pens, your handling facilities, your DMP pens.
Yeah, anywhere deer congregate, around your feeders,
Anywhere
your
deer
waters,
congregate, yeah. So you can
you
spray.
may hang a fly trap around.
That's right. You can spray the grass, spray the brush, fog it. You know, if you have one of those handheld foggers, there's a lot of ways of doing it. Now, as you said, Clayton, is all this 100%? No, I don't think anything in life is 100%. But if we can create the correct dosage and we can create a tool that the average landowner can use, I think they should use it.
Yeah.
And the point of this right here today is to educate and explore and discuss those options. So keeping the DMP deer locked up a little bit longer than normal, that was one of my requests. I hope and pray that Parks and Wildlife will allow that to happen so that we can treat them. Just a fun fact, there's 309 ranches in the state of Texas right now with DMP pens, at least one DMP pen. Some ranches have multiple pens. So you can say, well, that's not very many ranches, and you're right. But if these are known numbers and weights and dosages of wild deer, the argument would be, couldn't they or wouldn't they serve as potential seed stock, because we can treat them,
Right.
quite effectively. In theory, in worst case scenario,
In temporary confinement
during
during their most vulnerable time.
That's right. Wouldn't we want to try to save those deer, Clayton? Because it could potentially, again, in a worst case scenario, be seed stock for restocking.
Right.
So I'm about doing anything possible.
Yeah.
Another request I made for Parks and Wildlife leadership yesterday, for those users of those familiar with the Triple T permit, the Trap, Transport, and Transplant permit. The acronym's Triple T. So you trap them on one ranch, you transport them down the road, and you transplant them to another ranch. So you're just, like you would move cattle from one ranch to another. We can do this with wild deer under a specialized permit. There's some regulated conditions, obviously, and it's all issued by Texas Parks and Wildlife. Now, because of some other issues, they canceled that permit probably, I don't know, say 6 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, because they did not want to move deer around. But now I've asked them to consider reinstating that permit because we may have to move deer around. For example, in October of 2019, we had a really bad anthrax outbreak in the Western Hill Country around, Sonora, Zona, Northern Del Rio, Bracketville area. We had a major deer die-off because of anthrax. And Parks and Wildlife allowed my company and a few others to go back and restock those areas. So if you hunt in those 5 counties in Sonora, Zona, and Bracketville, today you're hunting offspring, and maybe even some of the same deer, of the Triple T permit. So we put deer back on the landscape. And so again, that's not an overnight fix by any means, and there's some regulations, there's some considerations to work out, no question.
The state utilized something similar to that back in the 50s to restock parts of the state, didn't they?
That's exactly right. Sitting right here in San Saba, Texas.
I mean,
yeah. So we have.
This is not a new thing.
Not a new thing. We're not inventing the wheel.
We're getting out the old playbook here. And
this is not carving of the new wheel.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. So to your point, we had the drought of the 1950s, and then we had screwworm, right? And so Texas Parks and Wildlife went to Aransas County specifically, parts of the southern parts of the King Ranch, and the South Padre Island seashore before it had that name, and they trapped wild deer, and they brought up 26 bucks and 36 doe in San Saba County, obviously all low fenced in the 1960s, and they just spread those deer out like a salt and pepper shaker all over the county. And today we have a strong, robust whitetail deer population, and they originated from that triple T permit
Right.
from Aransas County.
Yeah.
So be thinking about that. We have the deer today in San Saba County because of screwworm, because of the triple T permit. What would it look like today, Clayton, without the triple T permit?
Yeah.
Would we have any or very many deer here? Not sure. We'd probably have some.
Yeah.
But it certainly would not support
It would not have
landowners.
recovered near as fast.
Yeah, small communities like San Saba, Richland Springs, Melvin, Brady,
Right.
Mason, Llano would not be as famous and active as they are now because there would be fewer white-tailed deer.
Right.
Landowners would, up here we don't really have oil and gas production. The Eagle Ford did nothing for us up here.
Right.
So there's not that discretionary income. So you kind of more or less have to make it off the land. And wildlife is a huge part of that.
And chickens.
And chickens, that's right. Don't forget chickens. Yeah.
We're gonna have chicken for dinner here in a minute.
Screwworms better not get my chicken.
Don't tell Kathy.
My wife's gonna be mad if Screwworms get those chickens, And we're sitting here looking at these scimitar horned oryx. I've got them up here by the house because I enjoy seeing them. Scimitar horned oryx are beautiful grazing animals, low key, low on the habitat, easy to manage. And I keep them separate from my white-tailed deer, but I just love looking at scimitar horned oryx. So we have free-range chickens, we have scimitar horned oryx, we have low-fence free-range white-tailed deer, bobwhite quail. I mean, this is just Central Texas.
We got a bumper crop of quail at the ranches.
We do too. Finally, it's so
Man,
nice.
I'm hearing calling everywhere, paired up all over the ranch, and I haven't seen that since I've been there.
I'm born and raised on this ranch, and in the 80s, we could go to every deer feeder, and there would be 2 coveys of quail.
Yeah.
So I'd take my 20 gauge. After I deer hunted, I'd come back to the house, say at 9:30 in the morning, eat breakfast. I'd grab my 20 gauge and go right back to the same corn feeder I was deer hunting at.
Yeah.
And there would be 2 coveys of quail at every corn feeder. And so I could shoot, say 4 or 5 birds every time I wanted to. There was not a hunt. It was just go to the feeder and start walking circles.
Right.
With your 20 gauge, you're going to shoot quail. And now here I am a lot of years later, and I hear a quail and I get excited.
Right.
There's coveys of quail here
Yeah.
around here, but I can count them on one hand.
I had my guidance biologist out last year doing a survey, just driving around, and they do the drive around, the highway surveys. I'm sure you probably did, listen for counts just off the highway.
Right.
And he was just floored at how many quail we had at the ranch 2 years ago, and now it'd probably just blow his mind.
Yeah, you couldn't tell the difference. Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, just to kind of wrap up for everyone, we don't want to get this too long, but just remain vigilant, put the binoculars in, do what you can do, treating your livestock, keep an eye out, watch your waters, put your fly traps up where you can, help us to try and get with Austin and the federal government to get the other tool, but be mindful don't go vigilante out there, and you may do more harm than good. And just try and be vigilant. Look at moving your calving time of year to winter calving. There are some tools, but it's going to be a little bit of a long road, most likely. I hope we can isolate it. I hope we can lock it down. But if the last year and a half is any indication, we're probably going to be struggling with locking it down. So let's be mindful. Let's get on offense and try and do what we can do, where you can do it. We're here to help. If you have any questions, you can reach Macy at springcreekoutdoors.com, cottonseedbell.com. Our phone number, Hunter Barrett, my partner. We're here to help. Not here to say anything, just here to share advice. I'm passionate about wildlife and ranching, and want to be part of the solution, and or sharing that as best we can. So thank you, Macy, for being willing to come sit here, and thank you to the rooster for helping us shout it as loud as we can.
Thank y'all.